The colony was dying, and nobody was coming to save them. Commander Vexlar watched the tactical display with 3 of his 4 eyes, while the 4th monitored the failing shield generators. 12 Krathan battlecruisers surrounded Station Epsilon, their weapons charged and ready. His people, the Torvan, had held this mining outpost for 6 generations. Now they had maybe 6 hours. "Sir, the shields are at 18%, his communications officer chirped, her voice membrane vibrating with barely controlled fear. "The Krathan are demanding our surrender again." Vexlar's mandibles clicked in frustration. The Krathan didn't take prisoners. They took resources. His 700 colonists would be processed, their biological matter converted into fuel paste for the Krathan war machine. He'd seen the reports from Theta Station. He knew what awaited them. "Ignore their transmission," he ordered. "Focus all remaining power to the medical base shields. If we're going down, we protect the civilians to the last moment." The station shuddered as another plasma bolt struck the outer hull. Deck 3 decompressed with a sound like a dying animal. 43 lives blinked off his status board. Vexlar felt each one like a physical blow. "Sir, I'm detecting something," the sensor operator called out. A ship just dropped out of faster-than-light travel, 20,000 kilometers out. Vexlar's heart sank. Another Krathan vessel. Of course, they wanted to make absolutely sure no one escaped. "Classification?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "Unknown, sir. The energy signature doesn't match anything in our database. It's moving fast. Really fast. And, sir, it's heading straight for the Krathan formation." On the main display, a ship appeared. It was smaller than the Krathan battlecruisers, maybe a third their size, but it moved like nothing Vexlar had ever seen. It didn't follow a ballistic trajectory or use standard maneuvering thrusters. It danced through space, rolling and spinning with impossible grace. "They're hailing us," the communications officer said, her membranes trembling. "Audio only." The language is, "I don't recognize it." The computer is translating now. A voice crackled through the speakers. Deep, rough, and carrying an undertone of something Vexlar couldn't quite identify. Anger? No. Anticipation. "Torvan Station, this is the warship Valkyrie. We picked up your distress beacon. Civilian transport convoy asked us to check it out on our way through. Looks like you've got a pest problem. We're about to fumigate. Recommend you keep your heads down for the next few minutes. This might get messy." Vexlar stared at the display. One ship. One unknown vessel against 12 Krathan battlecruisers. "Who are they?" he whispered. The answer came not from his crew, but from the Krathan fleet. The lead battlecruiser opened fire, followed immediately by the others. Hundreds of plasma bolts and missiles converged on the newcomer. The ship called Valkyrie didn't slow down. It accelerated. Vexlar watched in disbelief as the vessel twisted through the weapons fire, like a dancer moving through rain. Not a single shot connected. The ship was impossibly agile, defying every law of physics Vexlar understood. Then the Valkyrie opened fire. The weapons were unlike anything in the Torban database. Solid projectiles moving at relativistic speeds, energy beams that cut through shields like they weren't there, and missiles that seemed to think for themselves. The lead Krathan battlecruiser exploded in a bloom of fire and debris before its crew could even process what was happening. "What are we witnessing?" Vexlar's second-in-command breathed. The communications officer pulled up the translation log, her appendages shaking. "Sir, the computer has identified the language. It's called English. The ship is human." Human. Vexlar had heard rumors. Whispers from the frontier. A new species, barely a century into space travel, making waves in the galactic community. Aggressive. Unpredictable. Dangerous. On the display, a second Krathan battlecruiser broke apart under a sustained barrage. The Valkyrie moved through the enemy formation like a predator among prey, and for the first time in 6 hours, Vexlar allowed himself to hope. The humans had arrived, and they were very, very angry. The Krathan fleet commander must have realized his mistake because the remaining ships tried to scatter. The Valkyrie pursued the nearest target with mechanical precision. Whatever weapons system the humans were using, it seemed designed for one purpose: overwhelming violence delivered with surgical accuracy. A third battlecruiser lost its main engines and began spinning helplessly through space. Vexlar's tactical officer was frantically updating the combat analysis. "Sir, I'm reading energy outputs that shouldn't be possible from a ship that size. Their reactor must be operating at levels that would tear apart our vessels. How are they not destroying themselves?" the second-in-command asked. Nobody had an answer. The Valkyrie banked hard, pulling a maneuver that should have liquefied any organic crew from the acceleration forces. It lined up on two Krathan ships attempting to flank it and fired something new. The projectiles left trails of distorted space in their wake. Both battlecruisers detonated simultaneously. "They're using weapons that manipulate mass," the tactical officer said, his voice barely audible. "That's theoretical technology. It shouldn't exist." But it did exist, and the humans had brought it to this forgotten mining station on the edge of known space. The Krathan fleet, which had seemed so invincible just minutes ago, was being systematically dismantled. A fourth battlecruiser tried to run, pushing its faster-than-light drives to emergency power. The Valkyrie launched a missile that accelerated beyond anything Vexlar's sensors could properly track. The fleeing ship managed to engage its jump drive, but the missile entered the forming wormhole a fraction of a second before it closed. There was a bright flash, and then nothing. The battlecruiser was gone, and Vexlar suspected it hadn't reached its destination intact. By enemy ships destroyed in less than 3 minutes. The remaining 7 Krathan vessels finally coordinated their response. They formed a defensive sphere and opened fire with everything they had, creating a wall of overlapping plasma and projectile fire that filled space with deadly energy. The Valkyrie flew straight into it. Vexlar watched his sensors in disbelief as the human ship's shields absorbed punishment that would have vaporized his station 10 times over. The defensive field around the vessel pulsed with each impact, seeming to grow stronger rather than weaker. Then the Valkyrie returned fire, and 3 more Krathan battlecruisers ceased to exist. The final 4 ships broke formation and scattered in different directions, abandoning any pretense of tactical coordination. They were no longer trying to complete their mission. They were simply trying to survive. The human ship let them run for exactly 5 seconds. Then it split its weapons fire, engaging all 4 targets simultaneously. Vexlar watched in awe as the Valkyrie's targeting system tracked multiple fast-moving vessels across millions of cubic kilometers and landed killing shots on each one. With casual efficiency, in 7 minutes and 43 seconds, the entire Krathan attack fleet had been reduced to expanding clouds of debris and frozen atmosphere. The station was silent except for the gentle hum of life support systems and the occasional creak of damaged hull plating. Every member of Vexlar's crew stared at their displays, trying to process what they'd just witnessed. The human voice came through the speakers again, and this time Vexlar noticed what he'd missed before. The undertone wasn't anger or anticipation. It was satisfaction. The satisfaction of a job well done. Torvin Station. This is Valkyrie. Recommended. We're reading significant damage to your facility. Do you require assistance with repairs or medical aid? We've got spare parts and a decent medical bay. Not equipped for your biology specifically, but our doctor is pretty creative. Vexlar found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. Valkyrie, this is Commander Vexlar. Yes, we need help. Medical bay, structural support, power generation, everything. But first, I need to know. What are you? What are humans? There was a pause, and Vexlar could have sworn he heard laughter in the background of the transmission. Commander, we're the neighbors you didn't know you had. Earth's about 200 light-years from here. We heard you needed help, so we came. That's what neighbors do. We're bringing our ship alongside your station now. Prepare for docking. And Commander, you might want to warn your people. Humans look a bit different from Torvin's. Don't want anyone fainting when we come aboard. The Valkyrie moved toward the station with that same impossible grace, its hull scarred but intact. As it approached, Vexlar could see markings on its side, words in that language called English, and beneath them, a symbol, an eagle clutching arrows and an olive branch. The communications officer pulled up a cultural database. Sir, I found something. That symbol. It's from a nation-state on Earth called the United States. The eagle represents strength and freedom. The arrows represent war. The olive branch represents peace. Vexlar looked at the debris field that had been 12 battlecruisers. The humans had certainly demonstrated their understanding of war. Now he would see if they understood peace equally well. The docking clamps engaged with a solid thunk. A moment later, the airlock cycled open, and the first human stepped onto his station. She was tall, bipedal, with skin the color of dark wood, and eyes that seemed to catalog everything in a single glance. She wore a dark blue uniform with insignia Vexlar didn't recognize, and she moved with the same efficient grace as her ship. Commander Vexlar? She asked, her voice clear and strong. I'm Captain Lisa Martinez, commanding officer of the Valkyrie. My medical team is right behind me, and my engineers are already scanning your hull for critical damage. We'll have you stabilized within the hour. Vexlar managed a gesture of gratitude, his mandibles clicking softly. Captain Martinez, you saved 700 lives today. The Torvan people are in your debt. The human smiled, and Vexlar was surprised to find it wasn't a threatening expression. No debt, Commander. Like I said, we're neighbors, and neighbors look out for each other. She glanced at the tactical display, still showing the debris field. Though I have to say, the Krathen picked the wrong day to mess with our neighborhood. More humans filed onto the station, carrying medical equipment and engineering tools. They moved with purpose and efficiency, spreading out to help the wounded and assess the damage. Vexlar watched them work and realized something profound. The galaxy had just changed. Humanity had announced its presence not with diplomacy or trade negotiations, but with violence delivered in defense of strangers. They had crossed 200 light-years because someone asked for help. Vexlar didn't know whether to be relieved or terrified. Possibly both. As Captain Martinez coordinated her crew's rescue efforts, Vexlar pulled up every file his station's computer had on humans. There wasn't much. A few scientific papers, some intercepted transmissions, rumors from traders who'd visited Earth. One phrase kept appearing in the reports, written by various species who'd encountered humans. Approach with caution. They are protective of those they consider friends, and merciless to those they consider enemies. Do not give them reason to place you in the latter category. Vexlar watched Captain Martinez help his medical staff stabilize a wounded colonist, her hands steady and sure despite the biological differences. He watched her engineers jury-rig a power coupling using materials from their ship without being asked. The Torvan had just been placed in the first category, and Vexlar found himself grateful beyond words. Outside the station, the Valkyrie maintained a defensive position, its weapons still active and scanning for additional threats. A warship ready for violence at a moment's notice, crewed by a species that had somehow mastered both devastating warfare and genuine compassion. No aid had been expected. The distress beacon had been a formality, a final desperate act before the end. But the humans had come anyway, howling from the void like ancient war spirits, and they had brought salvation wrapped in fire and fury. Vexlar made a mental note to recommend an immediate diplomatic overture to Earth. The galaxy needed to understand what humanity was capable of, for better or worse, and based on what he'd just witnessed, it was very much both. Captain Martinez finished helping the wounded colonist and approached Vexlar again. Commander, once we've got your station stabilized, my orders are to escort you and your people to the nearest safe port. My command has been notified about the Krathen activity in this sector. They're sending a fleet to establish a defensive perimeter. The Krathen won't be bothering you again. A fleet? Vexlar asked. How large? Martinez checked the datapad. 30 ships, a mix of destroyers, cruisers, and carriers. Should be here within 48 hours. 30 warships. If they were anything like the Valkyrie, the Krathen wouldn't just retreat from the sector. They'd abandon it entirely. Captain, may I ask you a question? Vexlar said carefully. Of course. Why? You don't know us. The Torvan and humans have never had contact before today. Why risk your ship and crew for strangers? Martinez was quiet for a moment, considering her answer. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight that suggested she was sharing something fundamental about her species. Commander, back on Earth we have a saying. It goes, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. We heard your distress call. We had the ability to help. That meant we had the responsibility to help. It's really that simple. Vexlar didn't think it was simple at all. Most species weighed cost against benefit, risk against reward. Helping strangers across vast distances violated the basic calculus of survival that governed galactic civilization. But humans, it seemed, operated on different mathematics entirely. Your species is remarkable, Captain Martinez, Vexlar said quietly. She smiled again. We're survivors, Commander, and we've learned that the best way to survive is to make sure everyone else does too. The galaxy is dangerous enough without us fighting each other. We'd rather be making friends than enemies. Another human approached, a male with pale skin and red hair. Captain, engineering assessment is complete. Station needs new power cores for sections 4 through 7, hull plating for the breach on Deck 3, and about 6 kilometers of replacement conduit. We can fabricate most of it on the ship. Make it happen, Kyle, Martinez ordered. Priority to life support and medical. The engineer nodded and moved off. Martinez turned back to Vexlar. We'll have you fixed up in no time, Commander. Your people have been through enough today. As the human crew continued their rescue operations, Vexlar felt something he hadn't expected to feel again. Hope, not just for his station, but for the galaxy itself. If humanity could cross the void to save strangers, perhaps there was a chance for something better than the endless cycle of conquest and survival that had defined galactic civilization for millennia. Perhaps neighbors really could look out for each other, even in the cold darkness between the stars. The Valkyrie's presence outside his station was a promise written in steel and energy. Humanity had arrived in the galaxy, and they'd brought their peculiar sense of morality with them. Vexlar suspected the universe would never be quite the same. And looking at the debris field one more time, at the remains of ships that had thought themselves invincible, he was absolutely certain that Krathun agreed with him.